page where we do our announcements about our sessions or whatever that is happening in Microsoft Learn and Microsoft Fabric. We've got our meetup group where again we do our announcements for events, for in-person events or for online events. There's a code of conduct for when attending the sessions. I do appreciate that. I know everyone is going to adhere to them. Thank you very much. And so for April, we had 3 sessions basically. The first one was with Andrew. That was great. If you missed that, just feel free to go to rewatch it on our YouTube channel. The previous week session was basically rescheduled. There was some issues that we will reschedule the session. But for today we have Greg with simplifying your DAX with window functions in Power BI. So I'm gonna invite Greg to the stage and let's see how he's going to introduce this amazing topic with us. Hey Greg, how's it going?
Hey, all good. I'm fine. How are you? How's the community?
Awesome. Community is always doing the great thing, right? I'm doing well. Thank you for being with us. I know it is really interesting and lovely to see the community members and great speakers like you are actually going to present and spend their time within the community, right? It is even especially in the weekends. The weekend is the time for rest. For everyone. Everyone is off from the daily jobs, but at the weekend, most of our sessions are in the weekend. That we have the speakers and also the learners, attendees who are spending their time for learning things and for you just teaching whatever that you have learned before and sharing your experience. That is really appreciated. Cool. I don't see anything in the chat yet, but guys, before I hand over the session to Greg and learn from him, please note that there's a chat box for you in both on LinkedIn and YouTube channel. There's live chats. You can just always ask your questions. The questions will be answered by Greg at the end of the session. But however, I will be in the backstage and I will jump into the call if you have any question or something is happening. But before that, Greg, do you want to add anything or add your screen? Actually, share your screen, and then I will hand over the session to you.
Sure. Let's get started.
Awesome.
Okay, you should be seeing it already.
Yeah, it is here. And let me just bring it here. Yeah.
Okay.
Stage is yours, and I'm just in the backstage and learning from you. Awesome. Good luck.
Perfect. Thanks. So hey everyone. My name is Greg. I'll introduce myself in more detail just in a sec. But just want to say that I'm grateful to be here and be able to share my knowledge. And today we are going to be talking about window functions in DAX, how this can improve your DAX, simplify it, and also make it faster. And just wanted to note that this is not only a DAX, so Power BI specific topic, it's very much a Fabric topic as well, because of 2 major reasons. First, Power BI is like one of the major parts of Fabric, that's one. And 2, I know that window functions, and these specifically that we are going to be talking about now, are also part of some Fabric certifications like DP600. So if you are thinking about taking that one or preparing for it already, learning for DP600, Fabric exam, this will be very much relevant to you, as you might stumble across these use cases, these functions, and this syntax as well during your exam. And well, that's just a bonus, but I think first and foremost that these are very useful and will just be handy for you in your day-to-day applications with Power BI. But hey, let's get into it. So my name is Greg. You don't need to try to pronounce my surname. I'm based in Poland, in Warsaw, where I work at Carney. I'm a business intelligence team lead at this company. At Carney, it's a management consulting company, currently leading a team of 7 BI developers, mostly focusing on Power BI, but also other stack, all mostly Microsoft related. So we got Fabric, SQL, Azure, and Data Factory was also my thing, and Databricks as well, but still mostly Power BI. If you want, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn or check out my YouTube channel. You just use the QR code provided. There you will find all my creds that you can just use. And yeah, let's get into the topic of the session. So the learning goals for the next around an hour are so that with window functions, you are able to understand their concepts. So what are they basically? And their syntax, because that can be a hard kick after the first sight, so you might feel a bit scared. That's what I felt actually at first contact with them, so you should be covered in that aspect. You should also be familiar with a number of use cases. So when can you use it? One of the window functions, when will it actually simplify your DAX? You should just be able to see, hey, I need to do that thing. Let's use one of the window functions for that to just do it quickly, efficiently, and just have your code to be neat. And of course, from the technical part of this session, the live demos in Power BI that I will be doing, you should be able to just start implementing the window functions in your day-to-day work, maybe refactoring some of the work you've already done from the next day onwards. So, well, tomorrow is Monday, so that's the perfect occasion to just start using the window functions right away. Okay. So, with the window functions, let me actually start with a super short summary of them in one slider. And then we will be reversing that moving forwards, but that's just the essence, and that will very much help you understand in theory what we are dealing with and what do we need, basically, what do we need to tell to a window function to make it work just as we want to. So the definition, that's my definition in the top left corner in purple. So window functions return a row or a set of rows from a sorted table. So from that one sentence, that definition, you can already tell that there are 3 main components that we need to make a window function work. So there is a table, because we are returning something from a table. We need a sorting order as well, because that table needs to be sorted. And we also need to define which rows do we want to return. So is it a row? Is it a set of rows? Maybe it's the first row from the table. Maybe it's the last row. Maybe there is something else. So basically, these 3 key aspects later on correspond to the syntax of window functions. So we need to basically tell each window functions each of these 3 elements. So the table that something will be returned from, how do we sort this table, and then which rows do we want to get back, basically. And we will usually need all 3 elements at the same time. So these 3 elements we will need to be passing to the window function each time they are obligatory. And there are, of course, some more arguments to the window functions, but the latter ones are optional. So these 3 are the must-haves, so to say. That was the essence, so we will get back to it in a moment. But let me actually show you when can you use a window function. and these will be some examples you might be very much familiar with. So use case 1. So we want to calculate the sales of the best country. So basically, we want to do something like this. We want to add a column in a table. So technically, we want to add a measure in Power BI probably that for each of the rows, no matter which country it is, we will get back the sales of the best country. We define being the best country by having the highest amount of sales. So technically speaking, sales of the best country is, well, the first row of a table containing the country names sorted by the sales amount in a descending order. So just the country that has the highest sales amount will be the one that we want to get reported the sales. So this is a very typical use case. For example, for if you are coming from an Excel background, you would just probably to do something like this. You would just reference this cell in a formula and just do some F4, so dollars, to get this value everywhere. But how did we used to do it before window functions? Because window functions are also a relatively new addition to Power BI 2 or 3 years, so not that old. Well, there were ways, and let me show you an example implementation. So in this table, oh, and by the way, I will be using the Contorso dataset for all of my demos. So it's a very popular Microsoft dataset based for the product demos that contains just sales data of a fictitious company called Contorso over various products, regions, markets, countries, and so on. There are a lot of sales metrics as well. There is profit, there is some sales, there is cost, and so on. So in this table, we've got the product subcategory and the corresponding sales. And yeah, to do something like a window function now, before, we would have to write a very, very lengthy DAX. I'm not saying this is the only implementation without window functions, but this is one of the possible implementations. So somehow we would have to rank all the categories, then get the name of the category that would be first, so product subcategory or country. Then we would have to filter the whole data set again for the category that we want. And well, that's like 60 lines of DAX overall. But that's not the only implementation possible now. And well, before you could also probably do it in a couple different ways. That's like my implementation from a couple of years back, before window functions actually. But let's just say that formatting the whole measure my way, we get around 60 lines of code. If we do it with window functions, well, that's just 11 lines of code. So we are 6 times cleaner, and the code is 6 times less to debug. So yeah, there were ways before, but now, well, with window functions, you can do some things much more neatly. And well, including this example. So we want to calculate the sales of the best country. That's one of the most typical use cases, like very easy to do in Excel, for example, with these dollars, so F4, and blocking the cell, but not so obvious that it was in Power BI before in DAX. So similar examples could include calculating the sales for the worst country. So in our tech requirements, that would be the last row of the same table of countries sorted in a descending order. So worst is the last row, basically. We could also get like the sales of the third best country or 6th, 7th best country. Or yeah, the third from the bottom. That's also possible. And these are all use cases for the first window functions that the first window function that's called index. So here it is. So with index, as you can see, the use cases always are telling something like we are returning the best country, the worst country, the third best, and so on. So this could already tell you that, hey, we are talking about explicitly naming which row, explicitly specifying which row do we want to get back. So is it like specifically the first row? Maybe it's the third row, or is it perhaps the last one from the bottom? So that's the first row again, but sorting in the opposite order. And these are the typical use cases for index. There is no way why do we have to rely on the same measure for sorting and to return. So we can also do it another way. These are totally two disconnected things. So here's a more complex use case for index, where we will be returning again the sales of a specific country. So sales, but we want to actually be sorting by the share of returns, which is another measure basically. So share of returns we have in the middle column. So the country with the highest share of returns, you can see that this is Italy, to be specific, and we want to get the sales of this specific country everywhere. So 56 million, that's what we got. So in technical language, again, I would say that we are sorting this whole table of countries by the share of returns in a descending order. And we are then getting which country has the largest share of returns. And for this specific country, we are returning its sales. So sorting by one thing, but really giving back something else, another measure. That's also perfectly possible in all of the window functions and helpful for such applications. Because, well, maybe we want for the highest share of returns, that means perhaps some quality problems in our distribution network. Maybe we would like to just double check what the sales is versus that benchmark and assess versus any potential problems or take remedy actions to increase the quality of customer service to reduce the amount of returns, for example. So this is a use case for such a scenario. Now, the offset. Again, a very easy use case for Excel. So offset, it's the second window function we are meeting. And just if you are coming from an Excel background, imagine that you are just referencing the row above your current one in a worksheet. So very easy one. If I would be in this cell, I would just say, and want to get the value of the cell above, literally, I would just put, hey, this equals the row above, and it's super simple in Excel. Can't get any simpler, really. But in DAX, that wasn't very easy as well, because we had to do some interesting gimmicks to get that done. But basically, what we are getting with offset is very much the same behavior. So, for example, we want to calculate per each row the sales of the previous row. So just reference the row above, maybe for some one-to-one comparison, or how much are we dropping per row. So our result would look something like that. So for example, for Canada, we are getting the previous row, that is United Kingdom's sales. So translating this into what happened here in a bit of more technical terms, we are just getting the specified value. So we want the sales of the country that's before. So that's one row above the current, sorted in a descending order by sales. So the country that has the most has the least sales, but is above, but has more sales than the current one. So just the previous row. Similarly with offset, just a sec. Here we go. We can reference not only the previous row, but also the next row. Or just as well, for the use case 8, we can also reference the row that's like 3 places above, 3 rows above. So whichever row we need, but just compare it to the current row. So in index, just to structure our knowledge a bit, with index, we always say that this has to be the first row in a table, or the second row in a table, or the last row in a table. But there's no way to tell which row is it versus the row we are currently iterating. On the other hand, here with offset, we are always comparing the where the row we want to return sits, but compared to the row we are iterating. So is it -1? Is it like -2? So there will be 2 places before the current one, and so on. So it's always a relative comparison. And then we've got the most interesting window function. That's the third one, which also has a great name. This window function is called window. So this will work very similarly as the two ones that we have met already, but window will give us one more thing. We can now return not just one row that we specified, but a set of rows. So it can be 1 row, it can be 2 rows, it can be 10 rows just as well. And the use cases for window are usually something like, we want to do a cumulative total, so something like that, or conduct a Pareto analysis, or do a rolling average over the last 10 rows or so. So what happens here is actually cumulative. So you can see that for the first country, the one that has the highest shares, we get the highest sales, we get just its value. But then for the second one, so for China, for example, this value is the sum of these two. And then obviously for India, so this value, we are getting a sum of all the sales for all the previous countries, so the ones that have higher shares than our current row. Okay, let's move on. So to structure our knowledge about the 3 window functions, index, we always use an absolute position and we return just 1 row. So that's the first row, the second from the table, a sorted table, of course, or the last one. For offset, we get a row that in a position relative to the current row. So the previous row, the row that's 3 places after our current row, and so on. For window, we can use a relative or an absolute comparison and position, but we have the additional ability to return not just 1 row, but much more rows, 10, 100, as much as we need. So it's a set of rows. It's already a table. And well, for index, we will usually be using it in applications like the value for the best item, the worst item, so the leader, the newest value, all lists. So something like that. For offset, it's usually comparing to the previous row or the next row in a table or in a visual, while for window, the usual use cases are cumulative calculations, Pareto charts, rolling averages. So what's the average sales over the past 12 months, for example. And of course, for this session, I'm only using tables and showing you all of it in tables, but this technique, the window functions are just DAX functions, so they work perfectly in any kind of visual, be it a table, matrix, column chart, pie chart, even if you want. So anything works actually. Okay, and now let's get into the hardest part of today's session. So actually understanding the syntax, which can be a hard hit at the first time. Bear with me for a couple more minutes and the hardest part will be over, but you will get a lot of valuable knowledge. So, well, for me, the first contact with window functions also wasn't the easiest, but trust me, after you get it, it will be very easy and you will just get used to it and love it. So this is the syntax of our use case 7, so the cumulative total. So as we could say, so cumulative sales. So sales of all the countries that are better than the current country or are the current country. So, well, the calculate part, I guess we can all understand that we want to calculate sales of something, but then this part, so window, it's not very welcoming at the end, and that's actually one of the hardest scenario, but we'll get there in a moment because there are a lot of arguments. Some might seem random, who knows. Let's get into it in more detail. So first, let's just take a quick recap at the window function definition that I gave you, that I shared with you at the very beginning. So what do window functions do? They return a row or a set of rows from a sorted table. So first we need to tell the window function, and these are the first arguments actually, which rows do we want to return? The first one, the last one, all the rows from the first one to the current one. Let's get into it. So we can tell a window function how to return these rows in two ways. So using an absolute or a relative manner, so a relative or absolute position. And these are respectively index and offset. So for index, the numbering looks like this. The first row from the table that is sorted somehow gets the number 1. Then the second one is 2. And so it goes up to, well, some number. If we want to select the table, the row number from the bottom, we should start from -1. So -1 is the last row. -2 is the penultimate row, so the second one from the bottom, and so it goes. So here we would have, for example, -5. Yeah, if I can draw it, this one. So this is the absolute manner. The first row, the second row, the first one from the bottom. And this is actually also already the first argument of the index function, so country with highest sales. So the first row from some table, that's exactly number 1. That's our number 1 row, basically. Now, for the relative positioning, here's the thing, that it works a bit differently. So the previous country, the previous row would actually be -1. And the row we are iterating at the moment, so the one we are comparing to, gets 0. So that's just the current row. The one that's previous gets -1, then -2, and so on. So the fifth row, that's before our current row, would be -5. And then the next row is +1, +2, +3. So it goes. And now let's just check out the syntax of our previous country metric. So that's offset -1. So it's indeed the previous row compared to the one we are iterating, so to say. Okay. And now let's get into trying to actually read the syntax of window functions, because you've already seen a sneak peek. The positioning is the hardest. Then we are actually specifying the remaining 2 arguments. So the table that we are returning something from, and what are we sorting by, so the order by clause. In my opinion, it's easiest to get through understanding the syntax of window functions now by just trying to read what does our window function say. So this is the sales of the best country, so the country with the highest sales. The first one, so to say, from that sorted table in a descending order by sales would be index. So we are using it's the best country, so we are using the absolute positioning. So we are getting the first row, which is, we are getting a row that is the first one, so number 1 absolute position, from a table that has 1 column containing country name. This is the column I have in the visual, actually. And then we order by the sales in a descending order. You can just write ascending, ASC, I mean, the shortcut for reversing it. So just please give me the row which is the first row in a specific table sorted by sales. I'm using the all selected function here, but you can use any from the all family function. I think all selected is the one that usually is the most intuitive, but all or remove filters or except will work. You can, of course, include more columns if you need. For this example, we have just one column in our table. So all the syntax, the one that we have here, basically comes to just give me the name of the country which has the highest sales. So that returns just the name of the country. We see that sales is the highest for US, and we get the name of the US. Why? Because, well, we asked for just the name of the country. Now we would probably like to just get the sales of that country. So what we have just constructed, we wrap in a calculate statement. This is what we had in the previous slide, and then we just calculate the sales for this specific country. So this would be your use case for the best or worst candidate KPI of a best category, brand, country, or product, whatever it be. And well, you can also very easily get the worst sales as well. If you would like to. So just instead of descending, write ascending. That's option 1, because the worst country would be the first row, but from a table sorted in ascending order, so starting from the lowest values. Or another way to get the worst country, just write -1, so that's the last row from the table sorted in a descending order. So there are a couple of ways to do the same thing, actually, whichever works for you, and that you can just comprehend pretty easily would be probably the best. Next on with the offset. So now relative positioning. So the row that's above the current one, previous to the current one, or the next one. So again, calculate the sales of something, and then we are using offset. So that's the relative positioning. So please give me the row in a relative manner that's previous to the current one, from a table containing the country name again, and then ordered by sales. So our table, our measure in a descending order. So as you can see, that's exactly how it works. And in business language, that would be just return the sales of the country which is previous, which is above the current one in terms of sales, of course. Similarly, to get the sales of the country that's the next one, either do +1, so just 1 to get the next row, or alternatively, instead of descending, write ascending. Again, that's same thing, really. Now, our beast, so the window function called window that returns the set of rows. Well, this is the hardest to comprehend, but we'll be over it in a moment. And it looks very overwhelming at the start. I hope now it's pretty much easier. So we are already done with the 2 arguments that are the second and the third one. So which table are we selecting something from, and then the sorting order. But, well, what does this mean? There are 2 arguments for the row which we want to return, and some ABS and rel names. Well, that's actually back to the definition of the window function called window, and the cumulative total, to be specific. So the window function called window actually returns a set of rows. So a set of rows is probably more than 1 row. Can be 1 row, but that doesn't make too much sense. It's a set of rows. So to get a set of rows, actually we need to tell DAX what is the start of this set and what is the end. So where do we start, where do we finish, actually? So the first argument is none other than the start. So we are starting at number 1, the first row, but in which positioning? Is it absolute or relative? Well, this one is absolute. So we are starting at the first row of the table, sorted somehow like we have defined below, but this is the first row, the absolute from the top of the table, and we are finishing our set of rows at the 0 relative. So that's the current row in a relative manner. So, well, we are finishing at the row we are currently iterating. So that's how we define our set of rows. So now, again, to rephrase that, what we've just learned, and that this is the start and finish, and we can say, is it the start in relative or absolute terms? We just say, hey, dear DAX, please give me all the rows in a specific table, starting from the first row to the current row, and we can mix and match the absolute and relative positioning just as well, and then we'll just get the cumulative sales of the current country for this use case. So precisely for China, that's, well, these two rows all together. For United States, actually the current row and the starting row, the first one of the table and the current row are the same, so we are just getting our value. So that's how cumulatives work. Now, a short riddle that I will just give you 1 minute to think about. What would this syntax mean? So we are calculating the sales of something, but there's a window function called window inside that also tells us which country is it. So if you feel like you've got an idea, just put it in the chat. I'll wait 1 minute and then answer the question. What could this be doing? Which countries are we perhaps taking into account for this calculation? Okay,
I'm just waiting for the answers by attendees. That's a really good maybe quiz.
Okay, I'll move on with it.
But that's good, But yeah, you can just move on. If we see any results, we will show it. But I can guess what answer it will be. So it is going to include. Oh, it is ABS for the second.
One ABS and one ABS. Yes.
One ABS and one ABS. It was 0 RAL actually for the current.
Yeah, precisely.
The current one, but for one ABS is basically. It is part of it. For me.
Here is the answer if you want to take a guess, Murdad.
Oh, I see.
So absolute is this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually the equivalent of just we want to calculate the sales of the best country.
Right. Yeah.
So just we start our set of rows at the best country, so the first row, and we also end at the first row. So that's not a very big set of rows, but that's just the equivalent of we get the first row of the table. So the best country, basically. And well, the lesson learned from that is actually that the functionality of the window function called window basically covers the latter two, so index and offset. That's a fun fact, actually. Also, index and offset are just syntax triggers for the window. But I would still recommend you to use index or offset for the respective use cases, because that will be the easiest to understand, and window just when you need to. But just in case you would not need to but want to, then you can use just window and get the same functionality as index and offset by specifying same start and end argument, be it relative or absolute. Okay, let's get into Power BI and see some of these in action one more time.
Awesome.
So let's start from index applications. So best item. Here we have the brand name. So there is the table with brands. We have some sales. That's also a measure. And we would like to replicate something like sales of the best brand. So how would that be? If that's the best brand, then it's the first row from a table sorted by brands. So that would be, let me actually maybe try to write that one live and see what happens. So sales of best brand, window function. Well, actually, not window function. Just to help you memorize it a bit better, I will just include the name of the window function we will be using. So that's index. And then we want to get the sales, so calculate sales, and then, well, we want to get the best sales of the best brand, so pros were in this example. So that would be index, because that's the first row from a table of brands sorted by sales in a descending order. So 1, that's the first row, the best row. Then I will again use all selected, but you are free to use any other from the all family, or remove filters, which is also from the all family. And I will use the brand name as the table. Then we order by our measure sales in a descending order. And here we go. Let's see what we get. Okay, that's in pounds, but that's okay. Actually, this is our column. So we can see that we are indeed always getting the sales of the best brand. Let's just check the interactivity of that. So if I would just select another product category, or just, yeah, okay. So now we are getting sales of the phone company. That's the highest scoring brand in that filter context. Or now we have just another brand that's in the current filter context. That's okay. But here's a gimmick for you, actually. In this example, for product category computers, we've got the sales for just 6 categories. So that's where our sales basically end. And then the rest of the brands, well, they probably don't really have, they are not selling any computers. Maybe they are selling some music or bikes, who knows, but they are not selling any computers. So they do not have any sales in that category. That's fine. But our new measure, well, returns also some value for these brands. Why is that? Because, well, we always told the window function index to just return the sales of the best brand sorted by sales. And, well, the best brand is still pros. We still can see it. So this is what we are getting, sales of the best brand. But that might not always be the ideal scenario you would like to get, because, well, your visual, in this example, a table has, well, too many rows. So we might not want that all the time. So what I propose that you do is something like I've done in this sales of best brand robust, just to show you. So basically what we want to do, if a brand has some sales, then we show the sales of the best brand. If not, then we don't. So that's just an additional if statement on top. So precisely, if we have sales for this brand, so we are selling, a given brand is selling in computers, then we just return the sales of the best brand. Otherwise, we just don't return anything. And, well, now this works pretty well. Let me show you once again. We'll drag it. Yeah. So compared to our previous implementation, we can see that we don't have the excess rows. So that's just something to keep in mind in your DAX journey with window functions, because you are very likely to stumble across some of these challenges on your way. Okay, let's now check out a case for offset. So we've got a table of subcategories again. We've got the sales, and now sales of previous subcategory. So we are just referencing the row above. Very easy. In Excel, probably. How do we do it? Or maybe let me actually show you. This is how we were doing it before. Is it this one? No, it was here. Okay. So before offset function, we would probably do something like this. So yeah, around 60 lines of code. That's not very easy to maintain or debug. I mean, that works. So satisfies the requirements, but maybe not super easy. So let's try to do it with offset, with our newly met window function. So sales of previous subcategory. offset because we will be using that window function. So calculate sales again, and then we do an offset. So we are going to get some row based on a position compared to the position of the current row we are iterating. So we want the previous one, so that would be -1 in terms of the position of what we want to get back. The table would be similar as before. So our subcategory wrapped in a all selected function, and then we need to say how are we sorting. So that would be sales again in a descending order. Okay, let's see how bulletproof is that, and does it even work in the first place. Here we go, and yeah, looks like it works. So this is our newly added column, and we can see that, yeah, we are just getting the value of the previous row, so the subcategory that's right above our current one. And that would help us to also do some comparisons like the one I have here to show you. Actually, just get rid of this one. So change versus previous subcategory. So this new column would tell us that, hey, the second best selling subcategory is losing 17% to the best subcategories. So we are actually comparing the red value to the green one, and so the second one is 17% better or worse or whatever. And then this would be 15%, so that's the difference of this. Sorry, that would be the difference of this and this one. So then the third best subcategory is selling 15% less than the one before. So that would also could potentially help us like see where are we selling the most, what's maybe the brands that are selling relatively same, and then where is the cutoff, so we are selling significantly less. And this change versus previous subcategory, well, this is a relatively easy measure. I'm just comparing basically one column, so our first measure, to the other one that I'm getting, so previous subcategory. So once we have basically the comparison to the previous row, we can, well, just as a measure, replicate it and reference it at our will. Okay, now let's see the cumulative. So sales cumulative by category. That would help us to get something like a Pareto chart, or just a cumulative total, Pareto chart in a moment, actually. So sales cumulative, that's our use case for the window function window. So for the best country, we want to get just its value. Then for the second best country, we want to get the values of all the countries above, and so on. So for this one, for example, 5.8 billion is just the value of all of these summed up together. How do we do it? Let's just repeat what we've learned about the window function window. So we want to get a specific set of rows. So I will say I will name this measure sales cumulative, and now window, because it's the window function called window. So again, we want to get sales, and then let's just rehearse what we know. We want to get the cumulative total. So we need to get a set of rows that starts at the first row of the specific table, so the first one, and then we want to finish at the last one. Sorry, not at the last one, at the row that we are currently iterating. So we are starting at the first row of the table, so that would be 1 absolute, always the first row. Then we want to finish at the current row, so the currently iterated category. So that will be cumulative, so that's 0 and relative, so the current row. Now, again, the table we are iterating. So that would be for me all selected and subcategory. And then, of course, how are we sorting? So order by, we are sorting by sales in a descending order, as usual in this example. Okay, perfect. Let's see how did that work. Okay, so what we have is now this column. And well, we are getting the cumulative. Actually, these are the correct values. I can already tell, so just the cumulative sum of the subcategories. But as you can see, if you scroll down, there are again a bit too many categories shown. So we are showing the cumulative total even for the subcategories that do not have any sales anymore. So just in one of the previous examples, we might want to do a small tweak to the formula. So instead of just like always showing the cumulative total, we might want to just pause at the moment when we are not having the sales anymore and just say that, hey, if I've got any sales, then I will be showing the cumulative total. If I don't have, then I just don't really want to be showing because that would just explode our charts and tables, just as what happened in this example. So we would want to do like a simple tweak with if, for example. That's the easiest way. So if we have any sales reported, then we show our calculation. If not, then we just don't show anything. There are also more ways than doing it with if, but this one is the most easy to understand and then maintain probably by someone else once perhaps you have handed over. Okay, so this would help us to understand the dynamic category. The cumulative would help us to just understand which categories, brands, countries are contributing the most towards our sales. But and when are we starting to just have some smaller categories perhaps here that are not contributing that much, but there's plenty of them, and then we can also select like top 10 categories that are perhaps the biggest and that we want to focus our marketing efforts on. That's an example use case. But what if the business question is structured in a slightly different way? Like something like, we want to identify 80%, we want to identify the brands that are collectively, so together, generating us 80% of the revenue. So what are the brands the best brands, of course, that are together getting us 80% of the revenue? So that's now a use case for a Pareto chart. Let me actually show it to you first. So if we add this Pareto chart, so a line, then we know that, hey, at certain point here exactly, here precisely, we have the top categories. So these will be the ones to the left-hand side that are actually generating 80% of the revenue. These are the best ones that we want to be focusing on. And then we've got a long tail of categories that are not that significant, but maybe costly to maintain. So how do we modify our cumulative category to cumulative total to get that? Well, that's actually also relatively simple. So if we have our cumulative already that we just calculated a few moments ago, that's how this part is done actually, because we just need to compare the cumulative of the current subcategory to another number, and that would be the total. So the total sales for all the categories. So for camcorders, we would like to show 16%. That's this 1.3 billion divided by 8.3 billion. So that's it. And for desktops, the number would be 5.4 billion divided by 8.3. So, well, we've already got the individual elements that we need for that. So we just need to put them together, actually. So in the numerator, we just take our sales cumulative by category, so this column, and then in the denominator, I just do a calculate of sales and then all selected of our subcategories. So that would be the number that's somewhere over there at the very bottom. So the total for all the categories, that's the number. and then we just divide the cumulative total by the grand total, so to say. And I can also show you that this is fully responsive, well, maybe for categories that have subcategories. So now this will adapt to the current filter context. So we will do a Pareto chart of subcategories within just the computer's category. And we can do similar things in other categories. So that works as well. And I hope that you will agree with me if I will say that this syntax, divide something by something, and then our window function for the cumulative is also not very long. That's like 13 lines. It's a bit more neat and easy to understand than some previous syntax. Let me show it to you again. Yeah, that would exactly be our previous implementation. So cumulative this time. It's again very lengthy, not that easy to maintain. If something breaks, not recommended. If you can just use the window function, you get like a 3 or 4 times shorter code. That's also usually a bit faster. Yeah.
Awesome, Greg. That was really useful. I do have some questions myself, but let's start with one question in the chat.
It's just a thank you. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, session. It is quick and very practical. Please keep on this session going. Oh, also, please share job or business opportunities with the community by region or remote jobs. But yeah, for sure. If there's anything, yeah, please share it within the communities. You know, the community is for helping each other. I have maybe 2 questions. Firstly, are you done with your presentation, or
I just have a closing slide just to wrap up to finish
Okay,
off.
cool. Yeah, that's fun. But you know, I'm gonna just ask my questions.
Sure.
You mentioned about the window functions are going to retrieve the data from a sorted table, right? So the table that we are working with has to be sorted in advance before we
Yeah,
jump
before we
doing the calculation, or it is going to be sorted somehow by the order by clause in your calculation, because you already have an order by and you're specifying a column and it is ascending or it descending by a sorted table. Are you referring to this order by clause, or are you referring to a table that is sorted already?
Yeah, I'm referring to the order by clause. So we just need to tell the window function how do we sort it. The table underneath can be a physical table in your model. It can be also a virtual table. I'm using in all the examples like references to the physical table, but this can be something virtual as well. You just need to sort it using the order by clause. It doesn't have to be sorted in any way before.
Awesome. So so the next question maybe comes with that regard is that can we have more than one columns to be sorted? For example, firstly sorted by the cells, for example, and then sorted by something else, like the quantity or something like that.
Yeah. Let me actually find the relevant measure. There is something like that. Okay, maybe I have another measure here. Exactly. So we can sort by multiple columns at the same time or multiple values. The only requirement is that it is either a measure, so we have it available everywhere, so like number of stores, the sales quantity or whatever, or this thing that the column we are sorting by has to be a member of the table that we have specified. We will not be able to use like the name of the, say, product category, because it's not already present in this table, but if it would be, then it can be used to sort. Otherwise, it has to be a measure, but I can already also show you how to quickly include, let's say, this product. What do we have here? Manufacturer, let's say. And now if we want to sort by manufacturer, I can just say manufacturer and then ascending, so in the alphabetical order. So this way it works as well. We have the table sorted by as many columns as you want to.
Perfect. So we have a comment from Tony. He loved the way simplifying Pareto formula. And there's a question is coming after that from Tony. Is there any performance consideration using these window index and offset functions, which is my
Yeah.
question as well.
So there are two actually. One is just always go for the window function instead of any other DAX syntax now, if you can. So if you can just do the thing you want to do with a window function, because it will be slightly faster compared to the most optimal DAX syntax you can come up with. But you can also, perhaps go for a less performant variant of DAX. So then window function will be much, much faster. So if you can, always, as a rule of thumb, use the window function if you can. There is one use case where you shouldn't really. So if there is a time intelligence calculation that you are trying to create, and there is already a time intelligence function that you can use. So like dates year to date, so all the dates in the current year up to now, don't use the window function for that, window function called window, because time intelligence functions will be quicker. So if you can, and it's a time intelligence calculation, don't use the window function, just use the built-in time intelligence function, like dates year to date, previous same period last year, previous quarters, and so on.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I was just thinking that while this window functions are basically simplifying our DAX formulas, how do you decide to not use these window functions, right? One example that you brought is for the time intelligence. For this one, is not recommended to use the window functions. Is there any other examples or use cases that you prefer to not use window functions, or do you have any checklist on your side that say, hey, if this criteria is met, I'm not going to use window functions?
So the checklist on my side actually contains just 2 points. First is if you can use the window function, use it. But if not, then just take a look at what's the logic that you want to implement using that. And recently I've had such an example that my initial thought was, hey, let's use the window function. Well, actually that was the offset function. So I want to get a previous row in a specific example. But there was one thing that I couldn't really do, because some of the rows in a table I wanted to use contained some duplicates. And there was a custom logic on what to do in case that the previous row is actually duplicated. So we don't know which row to take, actually. So there was the duplicating logic in DAX that I needed to apply. So if that's the case, there is some additional logic, or you are facing duplicate rows, then the window function window might not be the fix all the time, the golden thing to go for. Then you might need to revert to just be able to implement your additional transformations.
Awesome. And by the way, I really did love the part for actually for the cells cumulative column. That is really useful and very handy. I personally I would prefer to use the window functions than to go and calculate it for myself, even if it is going to be against the performance, because it is really very easy to implement and maintain.
Yeah. Fully agree. Once I had written like a measure that had over 300 lines of code. If window functions were there, well, they weren't released at that point in time. But
Yeah,
if they were there, it could have been much, much shorter and easier to maintain later on. So it's great to have them.
yeah,
I recommend to use. They are a great add once you get past the
sure.
initial learning curve. So maybe write a bit of them yourself and get efficient in them.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you again, Greg, for your great presentation. It was very useful, and I personally love that. So, guys, if there is no question, we're going to wrap up the session. Let me just share my uh, slides again. So, for today's session with Greg's session, we are done. So, if you missed it, some part of that, or of course you're gonna rewatch it and do uh, whatever that you've learned today yourself, and just experience that. You know, I believe learning is going to by doing something. Just go and redo that, and if you have any question, just you know uh, maybe if you can tag Greg on LinkedIn somewhere to just get your answers. And if you again miss that, you can always just watch it on our YouTube channel. It is going to be available immediately. And for our next session, which is already created on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn, is going to be Paula on May 3rd. Just stay tuned for the registration link. And again, here are our social links for the YouTube, LinkedIn, and Meetup group. Feel free to just subscribe to them and follow us on LinkedIn and being part of our Meetup group. And there's a thank you from Tanya. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Greg, if you have anything to add, feel free. If not, we can wrap up the session.
Thanks. Enjoy the day.
Thank you very much and have a good one.